Well, I want to thank you, Heidi and Kalina, for being here this morning or afternoon. It's already noon, and expecting a few more to jump in on our Zoom call. And today we get the wonderful experience of Stephanie Stanfield to bring in her. She has a Ph.D. and she can probably share a little bit more about a Th.D. is, as well as she's been in the Roaring Fork Valley doing a lot of energy and healing work. Who's going to talk to us about how we can shift our relationship with stress, especially when we feel we're at the effect of it, versus using its amazing power to support us being more effective in the world. So Stephanie, is there anything else you would like me to add to before we get started for our introduction?
I'd just like to thank you for this opportunity, and it's nice to meet you, Heidi and Kalina. Is that how you say it, Kalina? My son lives up in Vancouver, Washington, so I go visit there periodically with he has got my 2 grandkids held hostage out of Colorado right now, but that's a beautiful area. Eugene is absolutely lovely.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. It is. Not as beautiful as Colorado, though.
Yeah. And Heidi, where do you live? Are you in the area? You're on mute. Maybe, maybe not. Okay. I was very dear friends with distress, and it was really running my life, and I didn't realize it. I had chronic migraines, allergies, and I was pretty much told I would be dead before I was 55 years old, and I'm 67 now. So I fought the stress and I won. The stress didn't win. But it compelled me to go on a healing journey of what is stress? Is there such a thing as good stress? And I started working with, you all may be familiar with Rita Marsh, and I started working with Rita. And, oh, you work at Pickens County. Okay. Thanks, Heidi. And got started on a healing journey, a lot in thanks to Rita. And I still partner with another person down in New Zealand. Her name is Bev Sylvester Clark. And we put together a program called Creative Healing. And we presented that, and it was pretty successful. And I wanted to continue on with my education in this. And I worked with a man named Norm Sheely, and he was my advisor in my PhD, Th.D. program. So a PhD is a doctorate of philosophy. A Th.D. is a doctorate of theology. So I'm also an ordained minister. Norm is probably most well known through Carolyn Mace. He's the one who worked with her in his neurosurgery practice, and she was a medical intuitive. And they've collaborated together for years and years and years. And he was my advisor, which was really nice. I worked at Valley View Hospital for 12 years off and on, and taught CPR, and I was very big into conventional medicine, but it was literally killing me. And I did not understand any of that. And then I started listening to Norm and Carolyn and all of these wonderful people who had a different approach, a more holistic approach. And that's when I applied to go to school with Norm, who was just opening a graduate seminary, which is why I have that Th.D. And I learned a lot about stress. And many people think stress is an emotion. It's actually a perception. And we'll get into that in just a minute. I have a slideshow to share with you. So any questions, any thoughts, anything that you'd like for me to touch on as I move through this presentation?
So I'll say when I do emotional intelligence assessments through Multi-Health Systems and certified with them. And I appreciate, Stephanie, the idea of stress is not an emotion. I do, in the coaching I make mention to, if somebody says I'm stressed, I honor that, but I do ask to dig into, I go, can you use another word? Like use an emotion word. Like I'm anxious, right? I'm frustrated, I'm angry. And then the next level I take it to is where in your life, right? Is that showing up? Is it family, money, overwhelmed because I have so many projects to, I don't know how I'm going to get them all accomplished in time or whatever, deadlines. So I really appreciate that, Stephanie. I think, I guess it maybe validates my belief, right, on what stress is or isn't.
And a good book for people to look at if they're interested in the science of it is written by Hans Selye. And he is considered to be a premier stress researcher. And he talked about the general adaptive system. And when we did some work just before our call and you said I could take a nap, he talks about the baseline of healthy balance between eustress and distress. And then we create kind of artificial thresholds. And when we get down to what we think we're relaxed, we may not have even hit baseline. And this is the area above baseline where we think we're relaxed, we think we're managing our stress, where illness and injury actually happens. Interesting concept. So I talked about stress being a perception, and stress is actually your perception of the stressor. So some people have a fear of flying. They can tell you they have a fear of flying, but their response to it is very low if they're not having to get on an airplane. So they'll say, oh, but it's not really big stress. And then there is the feeling state, as you mentioned, and then the difference between the two. So if I have a fear of flying and I booked a trip in March, which I don't have a fear of flying, but I don't start getting stressed until the trip gets imminent. And then my stress level, my perception of having to get on an airplane is now becoming more real. So your level of stress is actually the difference between your stressor, fear of flying, your coping skills, and how imminent that stressor is becoming in your life. People talk about looming deadlines. Their stress level goes like this, the blood flow leaves their executive function and moves back to a different part of the brain, and you lose your ability to think consciously. It's just gone. So I have a little slideshow to share, and I will pop into that here. Many people don't realize that they can actually make friends with stress. Stress influences all aspects of our lives. It really does, whether we're consciously aware of it or not. Our thoughts, our perceptions, influence our feeling and emotional states. So what brought you here? Maybe interest, maybe you love being a part of this group and interacting. I just know I've enjoyed spending time with Andrea this morning, and I can see that the people here are just fascinating. So come into the here and now with me. There's very minimal distress in the here and now and lots of eustress, EU stress in the present moment. Your brain is fully functional. You don't get distracted as easily. And when I taught CPR, I talked about shock, and shock can be a life-threatening situation, and it doesn't have to be physical trauma that creates shock. And what happens is the blood leaves the core of the body and goes out into the arms and legs so you can fight, flight, or freeze. So that's what happens when you get highly stressed. And then if you stay in that state, it becomes a habit and so familiar you don't realize you're there, but it is still influencing you. So we talk about stress all the time, just as I mentioned, but do we understand what it really is? And who am I to talk to you about stress? I went through that a little bit, and my focus.
Stephanie, I can't see your slides. So
Oh, you can't see my slides. I need to share the screen. Hold on. It said I was sharing, but apparently I did not. Share screen. Okay.
There it is.
There we go. Okay, I'll just start from the beginning again. Thank you.
A thought that came up, and I know Kalina is going to be very familiar with this concept, and I'm not sure if Heidi does, but like amygdala hijacks, right? Like, when we have that fight, flight, what you were talking about, response. I don't know if you integrate any of that into this, just kind of like, and that's where
the amygdala is actually your meaning-making gland. It's in managing the adrenal glands to produce adrenaline so that you can fight or freeze. And it assigns a meaning, and it's constantly scanning your environment, safe, not safe, not. So we are actually meaning-making beings, and we can habituate the nature of stamping a meaning on something, and then we can't think of any other way to think of it. This is asking you to go into your amygdala and say, what else is possible? Can we make a new meaning here? Can we have it mean something different? Because the amygdala does regulate a lot of your hormonal stress responses. So who am I to talk to you about stress? We went through a little bit of that. The term stress, as it is currently used, was coined actually by Hans Selye. Stress defined it as the non-specific response of the body to any demand for change. And as you're well understanding now, we get used to a normal, and then there's no normal, and we wonder when it's going to return to normal, but there really is no normal to begin with. So now we're in these constant times of change, and we might be feeling a sense of stress as a result. And Hans Selye used the term stress because it's an architectural term, and it's defined as the conditions under which a building is built to withstand the external internal environments. In short, we are constantly stressed. We change every second, every minute. It's what we do with that that can bring negative or positive outcomes. And there are the two different kinds of stress that I've mentioned, distress and eustress. There's good stress, and this is defined as eustress. So this is when a change is desired. And many of you, I'm sure, in Roaring Fork leadership have set intentions, have put up vision boards, have done all of these things to send a message to the future of what you would like an outcome to have happen in your life. That is eustress. You've kind of set an intention, sent it out into the future, and now you're living yourself into that outcome. That's eustress. There's joy, there's happiness, there's a sense of fulfillment, there's purpose. All of those are eustress. There's bad stress defined as distress. Pain and injury, past issues, our emotional state. We'll talk about that in just a minute. All of those can be determined as distress. And that's interesting because when you are distressed, your immune system becomes diseased. Okay. So if we have a little petri dish with a poison or a mold in it, and we stick a cell in there, the cell goes as far away from the poison or the toxic as it can, going, it's so toxic. It's in fight, flight, or freeze, basically, in this negative environment. And it will do whatever it can to escape it. As I mentioned earlier, is this little single cell going to stop and be creative and loving and outreach? And no, it's going to go into protection and try to stay safe and try to survive. Eustress, tasty nutrients, all kinds of wonderful things in the petri dish. You put a single cell in there, it goes, this is so good. I feel like I could curl up and take a nap. It's just so wonderful. That's the eustress. Those are the positive, beneficial perceptions, emotions, feeling states in the body. Okay. A little thought here, you cannot be in eustress and distress at the same time. You cannot be in fear and love at the same time. You cannot be in creativity and protection at the same time. Those states do not allow you to be in both. You're either in one or the other. So is anybody here a cook? Oh, Kalina. I use this example because I am not. Cooking causes me some distress because it just is not a joyful experience for me. But cooks are a great example of talking about the difference between eustress and distress. So we're all finally familiar with this list of ingredients, right? It's just nutrition facts. It's this much of this much of this. And this is a recipe for an outcome. But does this ingredient tell you whether this food is good or not, healthy or not, flavorful or not? It might tell you if there are some additives that might be preservatives and maybe not high on your list of healthy eating. It doesn't tell you any of that. It just simply lists the ingredients that are used in the recipe to bring this out. What if you had all the ingredients and the recipes for living a joyful, loving, purposeful, and healthy life? You really do. You have all of the ingredients, but maybe you have prepared them in a way that didn't come out as tasty, as joyful, as happy as you would like. What is keeping you from living the life that you love? And now, what do you suppose the secret power of stress is? So let's just throw some things out. What is keeping you from living the life that you love?
For me, I would probably jump in and just say, you know, I get in sometimes into this just get things done mode. Like, oh, checklist, right? Here's based on the role, let's say, of executive director of the nonprofit, right? I need to do these things. It's right, Colorado Gives Day. Get out your donation emails, those sort of things. Or as a mom, right? I have to do these things. Or let's say because of my recent surgery, I have to. So I get into these, like, I don't want to say they're automatic, but it's based on the role. It's like these are things that my brain will make up I have to get done, right? Or I need to do these things. So I think that's where I think if I were to say that's the stuff that probably gets in the way sometimes of being more present in finding more fulfillment. And a practice I'll do, let's say if I'm putting an email together, Kalina, you'll laugh if you got yours today, but a lot of it is like really trying to do it with love. Like as I'm writing it, you know, it's with intention so that it's more purposeful for me doing it and hopefully for the person receiving it. But that doesn't always happen, right, in the things you do. It's like cooking. Stephanie, I would have to say sometimes it feels like a chore. Other times it feels like I'm excited to cook something, you know? So that's where I think the difference is, right, where I'm finding the joy out of it, or if I'm not, then I'm not connected to it.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head there. How about Kalina? What would keep you from living the life you love?
It's really the same as Andrea, but so there are all the tasks, right? I have all of this stuff that I have to do at work, and then I have all this stuff to do as a wife and then as a mother. But for me, it's how it's done. It's doing it well. I like how, Andrea, you stated it's doing it with love or with intention so that I'm not just, I talk to my team a lot about, I am not interested in you checking the box. I'm interested in you completing the task, but completing it well, you know? And so that's the bar that I hold myself up to. And so it's always asking myself, I did it, but did I do it well? Did I give it the best that I've got? And that's a stress or a pressure that I'm applying to myself.
Yes, 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 yes. When you quantify it with, did I do it well? Then you can find reasons to go into distress with it and say, no, I could have done this a little better. I could have tweaked this here. A secret stress busting idea to move you into eustress is to just go ahead and write things down on a list and then check them off. And as you check them off, you say, I did that. I succeeded. Those two words produce dopamine, serotonins, endorphins, and enkephalins, and feel-good hormones. And then your amygdala comes in and starts creating a new meaning around a task list where if I check it off, I get to start feeling good. And it takes you out of the distress of, did I do it well? That's a perception again. How well did I do this? That's a perception. That'll keep you in the throes of survival. And we want to move away from that. So here's a map of consciousness developed by David Hawkins. And let's just make the analogy a little bit more. Emotions are the ingredients in our life. So anything courage and below are stale ingredients, don't bring much to the recipe. They might even be rotten at the core if we get all the way down to shame, which is the lowest one. The ones above courage are the quality ingredients. They make the recipe sing. And so it's your meaning. Let's bring in the amygdala yet again. It's your meaning as you're adding the spices to the recipe when you're cooking. This brings me joy. This brings me love. I'm doing this from my heart. I'm connecting with my tribe. And then at the end, I did it and I succeeded. Those two words in our language produce this flood of feel-good hormones, chemicals, neuropeptides, and all of those types of things. So did I do it well? May not be the best question. I did it. I succeeded. I got it done. So again, we look at our list of ingredients and see whether or not this is appealing to us. I like living above the line of courage as much as possible. Those are the eustress parts of our life recipe for purpose and joy. Below is the distress. And interestingly enough, and maybe Andrea, you found this to be true, anger can be a motivating emotion if you have been living in shame and guilt and regret. You can kind of get angry and propel yourself out of it because it's only a couple of steps up from anger into neutrality and just observing. That was an interesting part. That was an interesting lesson. That was an interesting experience.
Stephanie, can I ask a question on courage? You know, on your list, it's in the distress portion. I guess I'm associating it with some work that Brene Brown talks about. It's like almost that, I don't want to say, let's say it's a trendy leadership, right?
Yeah.
Term that's characterizing a trait of leadership. Like we all need to be courageous to like step into ourselves. And I think I would associate with what you're doing to step into being in an e-stress perspective.
And David Hawkins used to have it in the eustress, in the feel good. And in some of the recent maps that have come out in his later life, he put courage right on the line. So if you're a 205 in your energetic frequency with courage, you are in eustress. If you have if you are saying, I'm facing my fears, I have to overcome them, I have to have courage, then it is a distress.
That makes total sense. Makes total sense.
So if you are naturally moving into courage, like, okay, yeah, I recognize, again, that's that perception. My fear of flying, I have to get on that airplane to go do this presentation, and I have to have the courage, and you're screwing your courage to the proverbial wall to get something done. That takes a lot of energy to fund that surge of courage. Whereas if you say, oh, I'm okay with flying. I really am more okay with flying than I thought I was. And that stress lowers, then you're in the eustress. Then you're in the advantage of having courage on your side. And it's not something you're attaining because maybe you're recognizing that you have that fear of flying. So that is the impetus for you to move into courage. Whereas if you just live courage, you don't need to be reminded of all your fears. Okay, does that answer the question?
Sure does. Thank you for that context. Appreciate it.
Okay. So emotions are the very core ingredients for healing your distress. If you're not aware of what your emotions are, so I put David Hawkins' level of consciousness and Abraham Hicks' emotional scale. The emotions are those recipes, those ingredients that move you from one state of being to another, that can actually shift you out of surviving and into thriving. And stress is not an emotion. Again, it's a perception. So stress is not listed anywhere on any of these emotional scales. It's not an emotion. Okay. Thoughts and emotions are very synchronistic. They manifest in the physical body, and the physical body stores your thoughts and emotions. Your cells remember all of your history, all of your history. So if you are fighting against a remembered emotion, thought, memory, trauma, you are in distress. If you are healing, learning, and growing from that same trauma, you've changed your meaning with your amygdala, then you are in eustress, and your life gets expansive and creative and wonderful. So any thoughts about this particular slide?
Okay, so the others, like the stress, like, so let's say like I say I want to eradicate the word stress from the dictionary, right? That's a statement I make because I think it's overused and it's not used correctly. So how, in your perception of using the word stress correctly, what would that be?
When someone uses the word stress, they are saying, I'm being asked to adapt to a change in my life, without realizing that that's what they're saying. We go back to Hans Salyer's definition. It's an adaptive demand, which means it's a demand for change. And I can come into that change very balanced and in eustress, or I can come in kicking and screaming and using up all of my energetic currency to fight against the change. And if I fight against the change, I'm exhausted. There's right, wrong, defeat, winning, competition, all of those kinds of stressful things. So when they use the word stress, just translate it in, I'm being asked to change.
So what, like in the medical field, right? Like, again, you know, you have stress tests, right? Like if they'll put you on the treadmill, right, for a heart condition potentially or something like that. How would you, how would you connect it in that? Is it basically your, like, let's say if it is a heart test.
It is a heart test, yes.
Because your heart is changing, like something's happened to your heart that.
They monitor the change of the heart under different environmental conditions. Okay, so normal resting rate, my heart might pump 68 beats a minute. Okay, if I go to sleep, my heart rate might lower because of the external conditions and the internal conditions of calming down and relaxing and sleeping. When they put you on a cardiac machine to measure exertion, they are actually seeing how the heart changes under the external condition, how the heart changes, how the heart rate is, how the beats per minute, all of that. So they are not stressing the heart. They are creating an environment where they can measure how the heart performs under different external conditions and internal conditions.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
I just wanted to, I'm sorry, add to that. It brings me back to really a great key or tool that I gained from Roaring for Leadership, which is mindfulness. And I feel like I use it every day now, but just recognizing what's going on in my physical body, and a lot of times sensing a difference, a change in my heart rate or my posture or just the tension in my body indicates to me, okay, you need to go back, because there are sometimes you're, and it's likely I'm in a shock mode, right? So I'm just doing the task and your brain is turned off and you're just doing that. I'm not realizing, I don't realize that that's a stressor until I recognize the change in my body. So that's just all I wanted to add there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And mindfulness, your body is actually your subconscious mind. So if we think of the term mindfulness, we are being full of mind, body, soul, spirit type thing. And a lot of times I recognize that I am in a stress pattern of an urgent state when I get tense neck and shoulders, or when I notice my breathing is shallow and it hurts to take a belly breath. That's my body saying, hey, slow down, calm down, make it easy for yourself. And actually, your emotions change. If we come back here, let's come back to this one. When you belly breathe, instead of upper chest breathing puts you in this emotional place, in the lower, the courage, the pride, the anger, the desire. The belly breathing moves you into those higher levels of being courageous rather than trying to do courage, neutrality, acceptance. So belly breathing, mindfulness, actually shifts you out of these lower vibrations into a higher vibration. So great observation, great question. Does that help answer and fill that mindfulness out just a little bit more too? Okay. The gift and power of your natural healing skills. There is one key shift in mindset. You shift from distress into eustress, which results in your best health ever, mentally, emotionally, physically. Again, when we get the endocrine system, which is basically our glandular system, which secretes a lot of different information into mind body, if we get it working on our behalf rather than taking away from our energy, our emotions, our state of being, then we are in health. And that doesn't mean we don't have issues. It means that we manage them from a different place of being, a different place of mindfulness. And here's your mindset word, okay? When we understand that all is one, and we get information from one part of us, the whole of us is experiencing it, but we can enter in through that door and make the changes that we choose. Do you understand the secret power of stress? It is actually choosing to live more time in eustress rather than distress. Eustress pays you energetic dividends, helps your cells restore. Every cell in your body is replaced once every 7 years at least. Like your digestive cells, they're replaced every 8 to 10 to 24 hours, depending on where they sit in the digestive system, because your digestive acids are so powerful that they have to multiply more rapidly. There are other cells that multiply more slowly, but every 7 years, you have a completely new cellular structure. And then the cells pass on their history into the new cell through the RNA and all of that kind of stuff. So right now, right this very minute, you are creating cells that will pass on the history into future cells. And you have the choice. Am I going to pass on happiness and eustress and joy and healing and information and all of these wonderful things? Or am I going to sit and pass on, I've got to do this, I have to do this, I have to get that email out? I would rather create cells, and I just kind of imagine them as little human beings, little tiny beings coming in. I would rather infuse those beings with a lot of love and joy so that they can infuse their future generations with that. That again is a mindset. And that again is the secret power of stress. Eustress will pass on as much as distress will. So you will continue to suffer if you have an emotional reaction to everything that is said to you. True power is sitting back and observing everything with logic. I'm not particularly fond of that word, but that's the word that was in the quote. Oh. True power is actually restraint. True power is mindfulness. True power is pausing and belly breathing and choosing. If words control you, that means everything else can control you.
It's like Colleen had a comment.
I was going to say,
Pardon?
Stephanie, if you could replace that word logic, what would you replace it with?
Let's go back to the emotions. Neutrality, love, joy. Logic is that left brain kind of thing, and it will tell you to tell a story about how you can be logical with it, being courage, being neutral, being joy, being love. All of those allow you this ability to observe without being consumed.
So what's popping up for me is reality testing, right? Like in the EQ world, Colleen, if you remember, like how you reality test something, this is like,
yeah.
To me, that's checking in with the meaning you've made up about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I think is coming up here with that word logic. At least that's how it's sitting for me. And then the other thing is emotional regulation, right?
Yes.
It's actually a combination. Am I on the right track, Stephanie? Does that?
Absolutely. You got it. You got it.
That's good.
So I have the 4 self-healing skills and a bonus. So belly breathing is one of your self-healing skills. It takes you into eustress. Water. You're about 80% water, and your brain is a water hog. If it doesn't have enough water, just that simple dehydration can put your body into a stress perception. I don't have enough. So you can kind of monitor your thoughts, and if I'm not enough, I don't have enough comes up, you might actually just be thirsty. So the rule of thumb for water is 1/2 ounce per pound of body weight. Because the thoughts can only reflect what the body's messages are sending. So if the brain is dehydrated, it is saying, oh my gosh, I need something. And then the words come in, I need, or I'm needy, or I don't have, or it's not enough. And we think it's an immediate emotion, but it might be a physical place in the body. I'm thirsty, I need more oxygen, those types of things. And then awareness, which is what you mentioned, which is mindfulness. Present moment living, actually being as present as you can to this moment, because in this moment, everything is possible. And one of the things that I have learned and I have taught and meets with a lot of resistance because of a stress perception, there is actually no pain in the present moment. The further away from the present moment and your true authentic self that you are, the more pain you will experience. The closer you are in the present moment with who you are and choosing the you emotions, the feel-good emotions, the less pain. You cannot be in pain and present moment at the same time. It's that basic thing. And the bonus is living in gratitude. Gratitude is one of the greatest healing skills that there is. And it's come through generations and centuries of healing and health. If nothing else, if you don't remember to belly breathe or drink your water or come into the awareness of what's going on inside and outside in the internal environment, what stresses you are experiencing, then just find something for which to be grateful. I'm so grateful for meeting with this group today. It's just wonderful. Let's come back to, again, that airplane analogy. I used to be a pilot. I'm not current, but I love flying. And it's hard for me to conceive of someone who has a fear of flying, but they do. That's the allowance. That's letting people be who they are. But say I book that trip in March. Now, as I get closer, perception of my stressor, perception of my coping skills, as I get closer to the event, I get more excited, and therefore I'm eustressed. I'm looking forward to it. Okay? But if I have a perception that I don't like flying and my coping skills are okay today, I might have a little bit of stress. My perception might be little. But now it's the end of February and my trip is March 5th. Whew. Now my stress is greater. Then I actually have to drive to the airport. Now my stress is greater. Then I have to go into the airport. Now my stress is greater. My anxiety, my worry, if we move those into the emotional state of being. My anxiety, my fear, my worry, my anger that I even booked this trip in the first place. How could I ever think I could climb on an airplane? And by the time it comes to board, your perception of your coping skills is out your window. Your emotions have free reign of everything, and you're standing at the door of the airplane going, no, I can't get on. No, I can't do it. I thought I could, but I can't. So sometimes the perception of your stressor and your coping skills changes, the adaptive demand, with the immediacy, the imminency of an event. So if you can practice all of these skills before that happens and make them normal, then when it comes time to boarding the airplane, you can go, oh, that's right, I can belly breathe. I really want to go visit my son and my grandkids. I can drink my water. I can put myself in a state of present moment, and my stress perception changes because my coping skills have now come up and said, I can handle this stress. I have all of these beautiful coping skills, management skills, healing skills, whatever you want to call them. So that again is a secret power of eustress. Practicing them when you don't need them, for them being there when you do need them. Okay? And I'm a football fan, big Bronco fan. Okay. We would not put a high school football player in the Super Bowl. Their coping skills just would fall apart.
Yeah.
They practice, 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 practice so that on the day of the big game, their skills are there. And they've practiced them so that they're almost normal. Okay? And you can find out what kind of stress is controlling your life. It can be mental, emotional, physical, or spiritual. Each type of stress responds differently to the same management skill. So if your stress is mental, it might not respond to a jog or a run to get rid of your stress because it's mental. You need to do different things for the type of stress you're experiencing or the type of change demand that you're experiencing. So Andrea, I just love that you're kind of sitting there in that machine.
I don't even know what's going on anymore.
That is moving your arm, because in order for this to heal, it needs movement. That's completely contrary to what they thought years ago when you were supposed to rest and keep it still. And sometimes even for the type of physical rehabilitation is needed, you do keep it still. But it's so interesting how our thought process and things have changed. So what you might be doing to manage your stress may not actually be the best skill that's available to you if you're not sure which kind it is.
Stephanie, let's say if you have a mental stress, if you can go back to that slide, if you had a mental stress, what would be an example? Like a physical stress would be go right that to offset it would be to go maybe exercise, right? But
Okay.
if it's, what would be examples of the other? I can think of emotional, but what about mental and spiritual?
Thank you for asking that.
Welcome.
My tagline for almost everything I do, because I know it doesn't matter where you come in mentally, emotionally, physically, or spiritually. When you manage a stress in a particular area of your life, you're managing the stress, the adaptation demand for all of your life. So mental is change your word, change your life. Simple example of that, I hear people say, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that. I ask them to change that word to wonder. I wonder about this. I wonder about that. Because what you worry about, you will worry into existence. What you wonder about will allow you to have the eustress of choice. Oh, I have choices here. In worried, you only have two choices: fight, flight, or freeze. That's it. That's all you got in the word worry. In the word wonder, you have opportunity, you have creativity, you have things coming into your life that you're allowing, and you get to explore different opportunities and different options. Feel the difference between those two words? Change your word, change your life. Now, emotional, you work with emotional intelligence, emotional IQ, those types of things. Physical, again, it may come down to what you are able to do. You do more of it when you feel good. I was in a PT program for something, and I had PT therapists that would say, work it until it hurts so bad you can't do any more. And then I finally got with a man that I appreciated so much when I worked at the hospital. And he said, don't do that. If it hurts you, don't do it. Find a way to ease into it. Pushing against the pain increases the pain. Wisest words I ever heard from a physical therapist. If it hurts, stop and find a different way, an easier way, or a better way of accomplishing what you want to accomplish without the pain. Because pain is remembered, and then you begin avoiding doing the things that are good for you because you think they will be painful. Spiritual is when people experience what is sometimes known as the dark night of the soul, or I don't know what I believe in a higher power. I don't believe I have a higher power. I don't believe I have the highest good at my heart. Those types of questions that used to be termed existential, but now we come back into, they are a normal part of our everyday life, pretty much. What's in my highest good? And if you're not aware of what's in your highest good, start doing things and find out what feels good and what doesn't, emotionally and mentally and physically. And then know you are in connection with a higher power. So much of when I first started in the energy therapy business, I couldn't call it energy medicine. I had to call it, I'm an energy therapy practitioner. And now that kind of goes away. I see energy medicine people everywhere, Donna Eden being one of the primary ones. And I actually had the opportunity to study a lot with Donna. There are so many new understandings that we can talk more freely about our spiritual self, because we actually are more spirit than we are matter. There's more space in this body, and quantum physics talks about that all the time, than there is matter. They say we actually equate to maybe a tablespoonful of matter, and the rest of this beautiful thing is space. What are we doing with our space? Are we filling it with good things? Are we filling it with our chosen? Are we filling it with what's in our highest good? That's space. Or are we damaging it with our thoughts, our emotions, our actions? It's interesting that Colorado has legalized pot, and people say, I need pot to feel peaceful. Well, you actually have so many wonderful qualities of mind body that can generate peace if you know them and practice them before you need them. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's awesome.
Yes. Okay. So, want to know more? Again, have more energy, clear thinking, sleep better, feel more peace, be more effective, have better relationships, both with yourself and with others. The interesting thing, again, coming back to the spiritual, if it's not happening here, you can't get it from out there. I used to, when I taught at Colorado Mountain College, I used to tell my students, if I could make you happy, if you had a happy button and I could come in and push it, please believe me, I'd spend all of my class time pushing the button just to make you happy. I can't make you happy. And if there's not a happy place in here, you're not going to find it out there. It needs to be here first, and then it will magnetically attract from the external environment. So I do have some programs, I have a website, I have some other things, but I'm going to shift out of here now and come back into the meeting and just talk for a few minutes. We have a few minutes. anything that you'd like to discuss? Anything that you would like to talk about a little bit more? That was a lot of information, and thank you for taking it in.
I just want to thank Andrea for hosting the webinar today. It just came at a really great time, and I personally have been looking for ways. I'm an introvert, so I've fared relatively well during this pandemic, working from home and staying at home. But I'd say within the last 3 weeks, I kind of topped out. And if you see, I'm in my office today, just because I hadn't been taking care of myself. And so when I saw this webinar, I thought, okay, this is going to be some self-care, but everything you talked about today, if you see, it just kind of wove through all of the things that I learned during our RFL, mindfulness and emotional intelligence, and the amygdala hijack. And I love the way that you expounded today, because to recognize that a couple of revelations that I received was that when you experience that amygdala hijack, that is your amygdala assigning a meaning to something. And it's difficult after that for you to perceive a different meaning in that thing. So that's like something I've got to I call it chew. I've got to chew on that and like unpack that some more. And so, that was good. And then I am a very spiritual person. Some people might say religious, but hearing you saying it's a fact that, and I believe that we are more spirit than we are physical. But to hear that it's an actual fact, that there's more spirit space in our bodies than there is matter, just kind of affirms a belief that I've had that was just attached to, that's how I've been taught. And being a pretty, there's this intellectual side of me, right? And so I love to have a fact that kind of underlines my spiritual beliefs. And so it's been a good webinar, and thank you so much for your teaching and for your gift, because I think that it's a gift. You could have all of that knowledge and not be able to relate it well. And it might have been a boring session. So I appreciate your gift and how you shared the information as well. So thank you.
Well, and I have this really vivid imagination type thing. So I imagine this amygdala man and the events coming in through a hopper, and he just would habituate stress, fear, and the meaning just being stamped on everything. And I said, wait a minute, the amygdala doesn't care what meaning it assigns. It will assign whatever meaning I choose to give it. It's my amygdala, and yet I have allowed everybody in my world to tell me what my amygdala makes the meaning from. And when I had that impression of just automatically stamping stress and fear and stress and fear and stress and fear on everything, I said, no wonder my body's falling apart. But the amygdala doesn't care what meaning we assign. So we can say love and joy, and it'll start stamping that more gently. Because a thought held long enough becomes a belief, and then we think our beliefs are true. And our beliefs emerge from a whole mind-body sense of assigning a meaning to something. And boy, have you ever had the experience where you are thinking something in one way and somebody comes in and goes, oh, what about this? And all of a sudden, this whole new dimension opens up to you. Yeah. So your amygdala was ready and bored with the old meaning. So you brought in a new meaning.
Yeah. I saw Colina light up, right? When even just now when you started saying this, like labeling yourself a spiritual person, right? And then as soon as you went into how Stephanie explained it, you just lit up. I just love that. I'm like, oh, I love it. Anyway, Stephanie, I want to just give you I would bow my other arm won't do that. But I my gratitude goes to you for having this intimate setting for Colina and I. And we will put this out there for recording. I did get a couple people respond that they were hoping that they were apologizing they couldn't make it today and did want the recording. So we'll put that on the YouTube, RFL, Growing Fork Leadership YouTube channel. So Colina can go back and even watch yourself light up. And
Yes.
I know I had
And you did. It's like the angels sang in the background.
Yeah. And I know I had a moment where it went, whoa, and I'm like, now I can't remember, so I'll go back to watch it again. There was a moment where I was like, no way. I had, you know, one of those little mini ahas, I call them.
Yes.
So, or I remembered, right? My brain went back to remember something that I need to hold on to. So now that it's recorded, I can go again whenever I need it.
And I so appreciate this opportunity. And one of my beliefs, whether it's true or not, I don't care, but I believe that everything is in divine timing and in the present moment. So this is perfect for whatever it was. I just thank you both for showing up, for participating, for asking great questions, for your ahas, and then for sharing that you had ahas. Thank you so much.
Welcome. You're very gifted, Stephanie. Thank you. And if you want to join, we have one more resiliency experience next Tuesday that we're doing for the year. Otherwise, we're going to take off the week of Christmas. But I'm going to be your speaker, and I recently wrote a research paper for my master's program on. It's called Resilience Victim to Empowered. And it's a lot of research on some of those specific EQ composites that'll help you create a personal roadmap to help you figure out what it is, maybe to touch on that can help you build your resiliency. Let's say
I'm already signed up.
Good, in a more personal manner. So I'm excited to share what I've learned with you all.
Well, in my research program, I researched the value of the creative healing program that I authored with Rita and Bev. And one of the tools that I used was a personal orientation inventory by Abraham Maslow about the self-actualized person. So there was that whole big emotional quotient part of it. And then the second was called a short form 36, which worked with physical and energetic levels. And interestingly enough, after taking the program, the highest category of change was in energy. People started calling their energy back from useless missions, walkabouts, whatever, and bringing it more into the present moment. And I just love that part of the research project I did for my PhD.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, Colina, I'll see you next week, it looks like.
Yes.
Look forward to that. And thank you again, Stephanie, and enjoy the rest of your week.
I will.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Self-care, self-care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.